Good afternoon. It's 1:30 on December 17th. We're in the Ed Bosch Freilich meeting room of Mandan City Hall. Before we call the meeting order, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the Bismarck-Mandan Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board, and if we can call roll to call the meeting to order, please.
Yes. Mayor Berglund, Commissioner Zachmeyer, Mayor Freilich,
Here.
Commissioner Schwab,
Here.
and Chair Schmitz.
Here. We'll let you get comfortable. No, they just said promptly, go ahead and start, and so, Yep. Our item 3 is minutes, review and possible approval of the minutes from November 19th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I would second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 4 is the 2025 to 2028 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment. And Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Give me one moment. I will share screen with you. All right. So this month we have processed another amendment, just the one. It's Exhibit A in your packet to the 24 through 27 and the 25 through 28 transportation improvement programs, since we are still under both, being that it is 2024 until next month. So the amendment was advertised for the required 15-day public comment period, and we also held a public hearing at TAC yesterday. There were no comments received. This amendment simply is, per DOT, we're increasing the cost estimates associated with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon installation project in Mandan. Those cost changes are noted on Exhibit A for you. No other details of the project have been changed. TAC did recommend approval of this amendment at their meeting yesterday, and I can take any questions the board may have.
Commissioner Schwab.
What's an HEU?
Oh, HEU. Yeah, so that's the
Funding source.
federal funding source. So that's the specific federal grant program that the project is being funded from. I would have to, off the top of my head, I don't remember this, but I think that might be a urban roads. Yeah, Kim reminded me. It's urban roads. So this is an urban roads project, and that's the grant program that it's being funded out of.
Are there any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 5 is Safe Routes to Services Complete Street Study. Is Mike online?
I am online. Can you see my screen and hear my voice?
Yes.
Well, thank you, members of the policy board. I'm excited to present the final results of this pretty transformative planning effort. But before I do want to give a lot of credit to our members of our steering committee that are representatives from the MPO, cities of Bismarck, city of Mandan, and NDDOT, as well as a variety of different other community groups. They really helped guide this process into what you're going to see here today. We feel really proud about the results. So the overall intent of this plan is the Safe Routes to Service study intends to aid in developing a comprehensive, integrated multimodal transportation network to allow for safe travel within the communities of Bismarck and Mandan for all users, including those populations of a traditionally underserved, vulnerable, disabled, and disadvantaged status. So who does this encompass? I think when you start this process, there's a lot of questions about, how much of each different cohort are we experiencing throughout our region. And so we just diagnosed some of the higher level stats here. 9% of our households are below the poverty line. It's about just shy of 4,000 households. 10% of the population is Native American, which is over 10,000 individuals. And 21% of households have one or more person with disabilities. So over 9,000 households are what we're really trying to help in this area. And these groups are often more reliant on alternative modes of transportation, walking, biking, or transit. And so we start to look at, why is this an unsafe network? Well, we found that between 2018 and 2022, we had 242 pedestrian and bicycle crashes, and 55% of those occurred in our highest density neighborhoods of Native American or low-income populations. 26% of our ped bike crashes resulted in a fatality. As we looked at those who walked to and from work, we found that it was 6 times more likely that you would be involved in a crash if you're walking or biking than if you drove. As we looked at the overall larger data sets year over year, we found that we're actually seeing some reductions in overall crash volumes, but our ped and bike crash per capita is still significantly increasing, particularly as we look at this as a per capita or percentage basis. This process was very unique in the fact that we spent almost over half of our time really engaging the public and key stakeholders. I think most planning efforts are probably more 3/4 technical and 1/4 engagement, but this was designed to really build in and around the fact that a lot of the information and data that we were going to try to resolve were from the folks that actually were experiencing this on a day-to-day basis. So we did a lot of time and effort trying to develop strategies that were, traditionally low tech in nature, recognizing that not everybody has the same level of access to internet connectivity. We did also include some technical approaches, recognizing that this plan overall is designed to support everybody's benefit from a walking, biking, and transit usage. And so we got a lot of good feedback from both methods. Probably our most beneficial approach to engaging key stakeholders, though, was our community advisory group. And this is a common approach to plans like this. However, what was unique about our approach to this plan is that we spent about $10,000 worth of our budget supporting various different groups, whether that be paying them directly for their time or paying to develop specific workshops or events to get people to the meetings. And we found that this was extremely successful in just bringing out folks to be engaged, to hear them. And they were very appreciative, not only appreciative that they were heard at the beginning, but I think they were even more appreciative when we came back later and they saw that what they shared had led to different solutions and directions in the study. So 4 key groups we worked very closely with was the Missouri Valley Coalition for Homeless People, Sacred Pipe Research Center, YouthWorks, and Ministry on the Margins. We also complemented this with a technical approach where we looked at the activity, whether that be the various types of different groups of people moving around. We looked at the amenities, whether we had ped facilities, bike facilities, transit, what that facility looked like. And then we also looked for barriers. Is there a major high-speed, high-volume corridor that's very difficult to cross? Have we had a ped bike crash? Is there a railroad crossing? And we worked together to combine, the art and the science into guiding locations for where we wanted to start to develop some solutions. As you look at, in Mandan, Main Street, or Bismarck, 7th and 9th Street, these are big corridors that often get talked about and studied quite often. But there were some really unique studies unique corridors that I think only pop up when you start to look at it from the lens, look at transportation from the lens of the disadvantaged folks that are using some of these different amenities. And so I'll talk about those with 2 examples here. We also had a variety of priority strategies we'll talk about after these next 2 examples. So here's one of our priority infrastructure corridors. This is Airport Road, and this isn't a corridor that's going to pop up on any of your typical transportation criteria. It's not congested. It doesn't have a high crash rate. But what we found as we talked with lots of folks and looked at it a little bit closer is that it has a lot of pretty critical services, either connecting alongside it or utilizing it, such as the Heaven's Helper Soup Kitchen and Closet. We also have the Dream Center, and then Catley Eagles Park, which services the Capital Farmers Market. We also have a lot of low-income neighborhoods to the west and a lot of low-income jobs to the east. And so we see this as a major connection point, but it currently doesn't have any sidewalks along it or any means to cross the corridor safely. And so as we looked at each of our priority infrastructure locations, we developed basically a one-page 11 by 17 document where the front discusses the issues and the back selects some improvements. And what we really tried to focus on was low cost, high impact solutions, the types of things that we can implement in the shorter term without massive reconstructions of the road. We know that can take decades worth of time to accomplish. And so for this example, you can see that we're proposing on the right side of the screen, connecting in blue some of those sidewalk gaps, and then developing some smaller scale ways to safely cross pedestrians using beacons and refuge islands. And then we connect those in through some of those grant funding programs, transportation alternatives, highway safety improvement program, Safe Streets for All. That way we can create new revenue streams to be able to support the ideas generated in this plan. We also did look at some long-term improvements as well, really just to be designed as kind of a guiding light for future planning efforts and needs. Another good example from the Mandan side of the river is Shady Acres neighborhood, which again is another good example of something that isn't likely to pop up on a regional, what is congested, where are the crashes type study. But this is a really important area that's really kind of living as its own island. It's severed transportationally speaking by the railroad, I-94, 994 business route. And as we look at this area, it's missing lots of sidewalks to a pediatric center. It's also missing sidewalks internally between the neighborhood streets. And so again, starting to focus in on some of those lower cost, higher impact solutions like sidewalks and connecting people across Main Avenue. But we also did look at, again, this is a good example of looking at some of those more impactful solutions like a ped bike railroad overpass on the northwest side of the neighborhood, and then connecting that to larger grant opportunities to be able to potentially make that a reality at some point in the future. We also looked at a variety of priority strategies beyond just pure infrastructure. One of the more popular ideas that came through this process was a transit circulator route. What we find is that a lot of our key destinations that we're trying to get people between fall into kind of this box area that really is encompassed a bit by the Bismarck Expressway up through Broadway Avenue, Main Avenue areas. And so by looking at a circulator route, we're able to get to this route based on the length and the delays twice per hour that can really connect into good key job load timings, as well as the different times of these different amenities along the route.
Mike,
and certainly this does need some refinement as you move forward.
Mike, can I stop you and ask you a question?
You bet.
Because this is going to be critical and some other work going on within the city of Bismarck and probably in the city of Mandan as well. Is this an extra route that you're suggesting for Bismarck Transit to take and populate with, I guess, two deliveries per hour? Delivery is a bad term, but bus runs?
Yeah, so the way that we proposed this was it would be an additive,
Okay.
or as you can see in the bullet here, potentially if you're able to make some modifications to Orange 5 route, which has some crossover, but also covers a lot more if you're able to potentially split that. But overall, that 250K per weekdays at the bottom, that is designed to be an additive idea that we recognize isn't something that you can just program and start tomorrow. It's something you need to save up for, apply money for and be able to support in the future and not just tomorrow. So good clarification.
Okay, thank you.
We also looked at how do we better serve Mandan from a transit perspective. And one concept that came up through this process is the idea of microtransit. Microtransit is a tech-enabled shared technology, transportation that lives in the space between traditional fixed route transit and ride-hailing technology. We're currently studying a similar application throughout Grand Forks, East Grand Forks. And we feel like this requires a lot more thought and analysis to determine if it is feasible. Again, it's additive to determine if this is the right fit. But a lot of the comments we had was it's very difficult to get to and from Mandan and between Mandan and Bismarck because of the frequency of some of the routes and some of the connectivity challenges. And so maybe reframing that purple route into something that is similarly funded like this could probably potentially increase overall transit activity and usage in Mandan. We also looked at mobility hub options, which is a centralized transportation hub. For example,
Mike, can we stop for a minute?
Yep, go ahead.
I think we have another question. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Sure.
On your last page that you did, what is the meaning and how does equity fit in?
In terms of from a microtransit perspective? So from an equity and microtransit, just being able to connect those destinations a little bit better. One of the challenges with microtransit is it's often technology based, but it does connect a little bit more in tune with some of the needs of various populations. So for example, if you need to get to and from point A at a certain time, because that's when your job starts, and you need to get back to point B, and let's say that's the Dream Center or wherever it happens to be, it just provides a little bit more direct connectivity, which just provides a little bit better accessibility to some of those locations. Does that make sense?
Didn't hear a word he said, but move on.
Go ahead and continue. Can you try to get your volume louder?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit louder here. Let me know if you're struggling to hear me. So our next topic was mobility hubs. As I was starting to frame up a little bit, mobility hubs are kind of a centralized transportation hub. So if we're going to combine our transit stops with potentially bike share and other modes of travel, these have become very popular across the country, but they also provide transportation adjacent amenities such as lockers or restrooms, bike repair stations, or cash-based transit ticket kiosks for families that are purely cash-based. So we started to identify a number of locations that we thought would be good fits. And the critical element of this is partnerships. If you're going to start to develop solutions that, let's say, have a locker station or a bathroom, you want to make sure that you are putting those at locations that can be maintained and operated effectively so that they are valuable to the community. So great example, Ministry on the Margins was one of the locations that was identified, maybe Bismarck State College. And so trying to connect those spots into these, the overall transportation network and those key destinations we're trying to get people to and from. And then the final item in my last slide here is complete streets policies. So as we looked at through this overall planning process, we tried to find ways that we could generate policies that would improve inclusive roadway design, procedures, and project selection. And so we didn't provide any prescriptive step-by-step of what you had to do, but we provided some ideas of how you could incorporate that and if you wanted to inject that into your overall policies. We spent a lot of time, though, talking from a policy perspective about 4 seasons complete streets. How do we better design for ice and snow, whether that be snow removal or snow storage, but also thinking about, do we have priority routes from a sidewalk snow clearing perspective? So are there key critical services that we need to get people to and from to be able to clear the snow? Maybe that's a a hospital location, or maybe there's a nursing home or something like that. And how do we do that? Is that an opt-in assessment? Is that municipally led? And so we started to develop some ideas and some case studies through that process to really help provide some ideas that could be considered after this project. So with that, I'm happy to open up for any questions, and let me know if you're hearing me okay on all these answers.
You're presenting tonight at this Bismarck City Commission, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
So I think one thing that a task force or user group is going to want is we're going to want some of the details behind some of these route recommendations, because there's a group that's going to be studying transit within the city of Bismarck for sure. Probably broader than that because it will reach everybody. But I can guarantee you that group, which I'm a part of, is going to want to have some details to this.
Sounds great.
I'm sorry, does anybody else have questions?
Yeah, Mike.
Go ahead.
Mayor Freilich here. If you go back to the unsafe networks slide, and in that 4-year period, you had 242 incidents. That's metro-wide, correct? Or Bismarck?
Yes, Bismarck-Mandan.
Did you take a deep dive into that and the causes? Because if I was to list auto accidents, I'd have a cause for each one. Is there a cause here?
Yeah, there's certainly a diversity. You can see the pins of where these are occurring.
And where I'm going, is it operator error? Is it bad sidewalks? Is it no bike path? What is it?
There is certainly a multitude of answers for that. General sweeping, there isn't a general sweeping result of if we fix this, we could reduce 50% of these. I mean, we certainly see a distribution of, is there some user error? Is there some driver error? Are they happening at traffic signals? Are they happening mid-block locations? Are they happening on the street if you're a bicycle or away from the street? So we do see lots of different causes as you start to break down 242 of them. There's lots of different things. So I don't know if I could perfectly answer just an overall general cause of all of these, but it's lots of different things.
So is that number 242 a bit misleading? A little sensational?
That is the raw number.
And that is for the 2018 to 22.
Yes, I preferenced that when I started this, that it's a 4-year period.
Not even current.
Right. So what are you saying?
Well, I agree that it's going to be skewed a little bit because it's not current information. It's from 2 years ago and over a 4-year period. So I don't know what that is supposed to highlight.
I would just recommend a deeper dive into those numbers. If we're going to make policy, spend money, I would like to know the exact causes.
Yeah, as it relates, I guess I can respond to as it relates to the yearly. You can see on the right side of the screen, we started this at the beginning of the study, so it's 2018, 2022. We could certainly update that. It did go up in 2023, as you can see, a per capita bike crash.
Yeah, and I'd like to say I'm not happy with any of these incidents. They need to be prevented, but I'd like to know the exact details.
Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you, Chair Schmitz. If I may, just to add a little bit more information, maybe some context to those numbers. As Mike said, these are raw numbers that were gathered, and they help to inform the consultants as to where some of these hot spots were within our communities. And it was really beyond the scope of this study to take a real deep dive into what the causation was for the results that were provided to us as far as data. However, I would recommend, as you've already stated, Mayor Freilich, that if any of our jurisdictions were to consider policy changes based on the recommendations from these studies, that perhaps they would be willing to take a little deeper dive, a little extra look as to some of those causative factors so that they know exactly how to address that within policy.
I will say that crash data, what we use it to do is help identify where. And so we did take a closer dive into specifics. Like, for example, on Washington Street, we found that the vast majority were, over 50% were still happening at traffic signal locations, or for an airport drive if they were happening away from crossing locations. And so it did help educate some of the solution packages where we did dive into it. I think where I'm struggling to answer is on a network wide, there's lots of different reasons, and it really, you kind of need to get the detective work down onto the corridor specific level. And so it doesn't answer your policy question, but we certainly use that to inform and help develop solutions on these corridor specific ideas.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. So, Kim, our action item is?
Thank you, Mayor Schmitz. Yesterday, the TAC did recommend approval of the study as presented. However, as you have already noted, the consultant will be presenting this final report to the Bismarck City Commission later this evening. And so staff would be seeking a motion from the Policy Board to approve this final report contingent upon Bismarck City Commission approval this evening.
So that begs the question, have other commissions already approved?
The Mandan City Commission did approve on December 3rd.
Yeah. Sorry, Mike, I was going to ask that question at our last commission meeting, but.
Okay. Okay, now I think I understand where we're at. Okay.
I'll make the motion.
And I would second that motion.
Do we have discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes?
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
No.
and Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 6 is the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Jason?
Yes. Am I coming through okay?
Commissioner Schwab, can you hear him at all? Commissioner Schwab, can you hear him?
Barely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is this working okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to share some slides. So we are today seeking your approval of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Arrive 2050. We have presented to all of all of your commissions and boards and councils. And so I'm going to give a very high level overview of a presentation that all of those boards did see. We did, again, get approved by all 10 boards. We had a few questions here and there on individual projects, and some folks asked some questions about, how the plan fit with other transportation planning activities going on. Had some really good discussions, but again, we overall had some really good discussions and approvals with all those boards. So really quick high level overview. Like we mentioned, there are 11 chapters. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan is updated every 5 years. It looks out 20 plus years. So that's why we call this Arrive 2050. It's looking out to the year 2050. It looks at the needs for all modes of travel, freight movement, vehicular movement, bicycle and pedestrian, and transit. And one of the things that we're really charged with doing within the recommendations is coming up with a fiscally constrained list. So it is a locally tailored plan that also has some federal requirements. And so kind of the combination of of making sure we're checking those federal boxes while going through and developing those goals and objectives that are locally tailored. And so did that through a public engagement process, working with all of your technical staffs, the engineers and planners, with each of your jurisdictions. We had 3 rounds of online and in-person meetings. We had online surveys to go with that to get some feedback from the public. Throughout the process, the plan was developed with guidance from that steering committee that was made up of the planners and engineers with all 5 jurisdictions. We had a chapter kind of on background trends, commuting patterns, how population has grown. Again, we're a very growing community here. And just talking about, how the community's changed. Focus on how the transportation systems, basically performed. You can see we also did kind of a safety analysis, like Mike was talking about. Looked at, where we had issues, specifically with the most number of crashes, and then also looking at regional trends. Also looked at congestion, where congestion is today, but also we started to look towards the future. And so, looking at how much growth we anticipating about 30 to 40% growth in population and households. Looked at where we anticipated, new houses and people to live, and also where new jobs. So, where people get services where they work. Kind of looked at all that, and that really informed not only where we have issues today with travel and safety, but also where we anticipate those to kind of emerge, over time. And so you used kind of the tools that the MPO has, worked with all the technical committee, and kind of identified where those emerging future areas of congestion might be. Developed basically we called it a strategy toolbox, but all kinds of, we know where those issues were and where we anticipate them to be. What are some of the solutions that we might consider implementing? Came up with a list of kind of regionally significant projects here. Some of them were kind of taking care of the system that we already have. Some of them were new features like, expanding roads out in those growth areas, making sure we're kind of filling in that grid, giving people access to the system, new bridges like the Northern Bridge Crossing, new interchanges, all kinds of different, safety potential projects as well. This is within the context of transportation costs growing faster than our transportation budgets will allow. And so long-term, we do see purchasing power continue to decrease, similar to what we've had historically. And then work through kind of with some of those goals, but also just really working in understanding, how much funding we have from the MPO through those federal and state sources, but also, working with the jurisdictions to get an understanding of needs and how to prioritize projects. And so that fiscally constrained plan includes some, maintenance projects where we take care of the pavements that we have out there today. Also, a few widening projects where we start to try to add some capacity to deal with the congestion and safety issues that pop up. But also new trails and recommendations for some safety projects at critical intersections. And then the final chapter was going through and just, again, demonstrating that we had a locally tailored plan, but making sure that we fit within those federal requirements. And that was a really high level, but I know you've all been on the boards and seen the presentation, so I left it pretty high level, but I will, I guess, answer any questions, and Kim, let me know if there's anything else we need to address too.
Board members, any questions? Go ahead, Kim.
There is a general trend with these presentations, and Lincoln isn't highlighted. We are a small community. We are growing. We have annexed in a large portion of land, and I would appreciate in our future projects that we highlight some of Lincoln in that discussion.
I agree. Okay. I have a question on slide number 7.
Yes.
So you have a 2% assumed annual growth in transportation revenues and a 4% assumed annual project cost inflation.
Yes.
Any recommendation as to how to handle that?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that we recommend as we go through this process that this is a rather conservative approach to what we call fiscal constraint, right? Um, Costs have historically been going up 4%, and we anticipate that funding from traditional sources will continue to go up about 2%. One of the things that there are opportunities now for are additional what we call discretionary grants. So there's state programs, there's federal programs that are basically seeking additional funding beyond this pot for that funding. And so when we keep this list of all of these projects, even if they didn't fit within that fiscal constraint, there are additional funding opportunities out there that they aren't slam dunks, right? They aren't guaranteed, but at the same time, they allow us to kind of start positioning ourselves with planning documents like this to demonstrate what those benefits are and why we, as a region kind of deserve that additional funding. And so that's one of the potential solutions. Is again, there's additional funding sources out there. And I think that's kind of one of the main takeaways from this process that, we did kind of come up with this maybe more constrained list of projects, but I would bet that over the next few years, additional funding opportunities kind of come along and that we position ourselves to kind of get in line to help make some of these other projects on this list come to fruition.
Thank you.
So our action item would be to move to approve the resolution. Is that correct?
I'll make that motion.
I guess if there isn't a second, I'll second it, so we have it. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
No.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 7 is the 2024 pavement conditions and collection and analysis. I believe Kurt is online.
Hello, everybody. Are you able to hear me okay?
You'll have to speak up as well as you can, please.
Okay. Is this any better? Leaning in a little bit here. Perfect.
It's marginal, but we'll go.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present our results here. As Kim mentioned earlier, we have a few roadways that we're still investigating, and we'll be updating our findings based off of a bit more investigating into a few roadway conditions. In the meantime, however, I'd like to share the results of our study thus far, and you should be able to see on your screens now a version of the PowerPoint presentation here, and hopefully this is coming through clearly for everyone. Perfect. So, presenting the 2024 pavement conditions and analysis report results. This project, the scope of this project was to perform a comprehensive pavement condition survey on approximately 225 centerline miles of collectors and arterial roadways for the MPO. As part of the survey, we're collecting pavement condition index values per ASTM D6433 and international roughness index values. The pavement condition index values provide a more objective assessment of the condition of the roadways, while the international roughness index essentially determines how bumpy the roads are. I like to say that it measures how much coffee you're going to spill on yourself on your way to the office. So those two indices were captured as part of this study. We've also updated the pavement management system, PAVER, which is developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the participating jurisdictions in this study. I've been a part of this project since 2012 or so, and this is the third update of these systems. And so the MPO, as well as the member jurisdictions, have a very good, up-to-date pavement management system, which they're able to use as part of this project afterwards. We then linked pavement condition data to GIS, and we performed analyses outlined in the in the RFP. And as part of this, we're also providing final presentations. We'll be updating that presentation and presenting again to TAC in January. So as part of this project, we had 10 major tasks. We are at the very end where we're doing our final analysis and reporting, developing our 7-year pavement M&R maintenance and rehabilitation plans. The pavement inventory update, which was a major task. We did a review of the MPO's roadway network and updated the GIS and the paver database accordingly. There were several roads that had been, well, not several, a handful of roads that had been resegmented or updated, reconstructed since the previous survey. And so we updated that information in the MPO's paver database. We then performed the comprehensive pavement condition survey where we captured both the PCI values as well as the IRI values with a roadway data collection system. We did work with the MPO to coordinate a media event on this back in October where we had local media come out and film the vehicle that was used to collect the pavement condition data. But essentially, the Ford Transit van shown here by Roadway Asset Services, our partner in this project, consists of several camera systems. We have 360-degree camera imaging with this system, as well as high-resolution 3D downward imaging capabilities hanging off the back of this system. And really the key to this project and where the technology has evolved over the last 2 decades is with that 3D pavement imaging. We're not actually scanning through the surface of the roadways, but we are able to, using artificial illumination, capture a 3D surface of the roadway. And that 3D image, using that 3D imagery, we have some machine learning techniques supplemented by manual quality control, quality assurance to assess the type, severity, and quantity of cracking on the MPO's roadways and the member agency roadways, so that we can determine a more accurate and repeatable pavement condition index. The technology has evolved faster than the standards, so over time, we do see some noise in the data. We don't expect there to be perfect year-over-year correlation with the results. Simply as the images get better, we do tend to see more cracking, better or for worse. So we have seen some changes and some impact of that on the condition scores that we've captured, but nothing significant at this point. As part of the system, we're also capturing rutting in the roadways. Rutting is basically where you have depressions in the wheel paths, typically due to heavier truck traffic, and those rutting values are calculated using this 3D imagery as well, and is part of the pavement condition index. Here's an example of some imagery that was collected. It's basically showing a 2D image on the left, and then the blue lines that are showing cracking, and then we have the 3D image on the right, kind of showing it's more of a ghostly image where the darker the pixels on that image, the more likely that is to be a crack. And this imagery really has allowed consultants and developers of this type of technology to do more automated crack detection so that the results do get more repeatable over time. The resolution, as I mentioned, of these systems has improved significantly over the past 2 decades. In fact, back in the late 90s, we were using 35 millimeter film to do these types of surveys, and that evolved to VHS to video to 2D line scan, and now we're at 3D digital line scan imagery, which is rather remarkable. As far as capturing the International Roughness Index values, the IRI, we use a road surface profiler, and this profiler is certified annually by the Texas Transportation Institute, based at College Station, Texas. They have a site there that has many different types of roadways, and we calibrate the system there. And basically, we capture these IRI values that measure how many inches of vertical displacement there are over a mile of roadway. And that, again, as I mentioned earlier, determines how bumpy the roads are. And that's something else to benchmark off of. So the results of this year's surveys thus far, and again, as I mentioned, we will be making some adjustments to the data based off of feedback from the city. But we're looking at, as it has been over the past several years of doing this project with the MPO, all of the agencies are showing PCI values above 70. Burley County is right around 70, but most of the member jurisdictions actually have PCI values above 70, which is rather great. So the roads that we do survey as part of this study are showing as to be in adequate condition. We don't like to say great or excellent, but adequate, meaning that these roads are candidates. The average condition of these roads is pretty good. And then for those roads that are in good condition, we do, of course, recommend implementing pavement preservation activities. And for the small group of roads that might be unsatisfactory or in need of rehabilitation, those roads may require resurfacing, some types of base repair, and maybe even reconstruction at worst. It is worth noting that it is cheaper over the life cycle of a roadway to basically maintain it in good condition. So very similar to changing the oil in your car. You want to do that, used to be 3,000 miles, and then it went to 5, and now some vehicles are at 10,000 miles. But basically routine preventive maintenance, crack sealing, joint sealing for concrete pavements helps keep moisture out of the base of roadways and helps minimize or at least helps delay or offset deterioration of the roads in the region. Here's a map showing the pavement condition scores that were calculated as part of this survey. We're seeing that there are some roads in red that are in unsatisfactory condition, and many of the roads shown here are in green. We do have to account for some of those red roads will become green based off of our review of the data. We need to update the work history data that we have in our database, and some of those values will change based off the feedback that we got from Bismarck. So as far as the analysis goes with this project, we identified some of the maintenance activities, the preventive maintenance activities that are used within the region, and we set up the paver modeling where we ran these 7-year analyses to include some of these treatments, the application of these treatments. The MPO roads are all functionally classified roadways, so heavier duty roadways. But we did do a pickup project for the city of Bismarck, and they do some slightly different maintenance of some of their local roadways than what the MPO, the functionally classified roadways, do. But we factored in those M&R activities in our analysis, and then we accounted, of course, for different pavement surface types, asphalt surfaced roadways versus concrete surfaced roadways. And we developed, we used escalation factors from the last round's unit costs, increase those costs a bit to reflect for regional variations in costs. And we're verifying those again with Bismarck to make sure we're pretty spot on with those. And then we developed a decision matrix based off of PCI scores, IRI, functional classification, and surface type, and then basically projected the future condition of those roadways in our analysis. So we looked at essentially for each agency, for each roadway that was included in this study, we looked at based off the PCI values in particular, attempted to forecast future conditions and then estimate the required level of funding for each roadway to basically maintain that at or above a PCI score of 65 or 75 in that range. And really what we're doing with this is attempting to apply preventive strategies to roadways that are in good condition and then rehabilitate, perform more major work, whether that's resurfacing or reconstruction on roadways that are deemed either unsatisfactory or approaching that point where pavement deterioration accelerates, which is typically in the 55 to 60 range of PCI values. Every roadway is a little bit different, subjected to different traffic, as well as it has different drainage characteristics, and each roadway has different materials. Pavements, though they may look very similar on the surface, each one is rather unique based off of how it was designed, the materials that were used to construct it, the drainage characteristics, as well as the soil conditions below that roadway. As I mentioned, unit costs were adjusted, and in this case, we applied the annual inflation rate of 3%. And that inflation rate is, as we've seen over the last several years, it goes up and down. It can be dramatic and can be lower. But for this one, we just set it at 3%. We can adjust that at any time using paver with the push of a button. So depending on how things proceed moving forward or what we see in the market space, those forecasts can be adjusted very, very easily. So the results thus far, we're showing for the city of Bismarck roadways and annual funding of approximately 10.8, basically a total funding to maintain the roadways or to keep them at or above the critical PCI value from 2025 to 2031, totaling about 76 million based off of our initial estimates. And of course, as I mentioned, some work has been done, so that will be one number that does get adjusted when we submit the final, a revised final report here. And we can see the values for the roads in Lincoln, Mandan, Burleigh County, and Morton County as well. And essentially, what we're doing is we're taking these pavement condition scores 2025, and we've taken the results that we captured in 2024, we've deteriorated them to 2025, and that's why some of those PCI values in the 2025 column here look less than what we reported in our analysis, because when we start our analysis in 2025, we're assuming that the roads have continued to deteriorate, and then at the end of 2031, that reflects the total investment in the roadways over that 7-year period. So in summary, we performed a pavement condition assessment in August, September actually it caught it a little bit later. It was late August, September, and we're still collecting data in October. The project schedule was a bit expedited, just based off of scheduling and all things considered. We were able to capture all the data before weather went south or got a little bit too cold for our sensors. And the data that we collected was then analyzed and entered into the paver system, where we calculated the PCI scores for each roadway. IRI scores were entered as well at this time, but those are just measured from the data from the sensors. So at the time of the inspection, we found an average PCI of the MPO's functionally classified roads of 72.5, essentially 73, kind of smack in the middle there, and an overall assessment based off of the MPO's 3-category rating system to be adequate, and that system for rating pavements, we adopted that from the United States Air Force. Those are the same 3 categories that the Air Force uses, and the categories are essentially the same as what the DoD uses for assessing their pavement conditions using the PCI method. Some of the DOTs have slightly different ways of doing that, but for roads like this that straddle DOT/municipal, PCI, those 3 categories are very common. And then using the pavement condition, using the pavement condition data that we captured, we got that into paver and then ran the analyses and determined what the level of maintenance and rehabilitation needs are for each one of the roadways moving forward. It should be noted, and I want to really put a fine point on this. These are not engineering estimates for the work that needs to be done on these roads. These are based off of the paver recommendations, which should be considered simply as budgetary ballpark numbers. If designing a project for any one of these roadways, there are other factors that would be considered, geometry, road alignment, things like that. Those would all be part of a more detailed engineering estimate. But the purpose of this study was simply to assess overall conditions and then develop network level kind of budgetary numbers for these roads that consider only the roadway component of any project. So moving forward, City of Bismarck has been really good at implementing pavement preservation techniques, and strongly recommend continuing to do those. I think the city has one of the most proactive concrete joint sealing programs that I've seen. I had the benefit of actually being out there a few years back to watch the contractors do joint seal on the concrete pavements, and it was really amazing. If the MPO and the member agencies do decide to do any additional major rehabilitation projects or design projects, we strongly recommend the use of structural testing on those roads, and there are firms in the region that are able to provide structural testing to determine the underlying root cause of what may be causing deterioration of these roads, and that determination can help won't necessarily save any money, but it will help you identify exactly what rehabilitation technique is the most appropriate for those roads. This survey, again, was based off of a surface condition assessment, but we did not look at the underlying structure of the roadways. So that structural testing does get more expensive, but it can be used effectively at a project level design phase, to determine what the most appropriate rehabilitation technique is. And then, of course, routine pavement condition monitoring, MPOs on essentially a 5-year cycle. And then a routine update of the paver database. And the city of Bismarck is in the process of updating their paver database, and they've done so over the past several years and continue to do so. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions.
Are there any questions? Go ahead, Mayor.
I do, thank you. I don't know if you're aware, but the city of Lincoln is looking to use mastic to do
okay.
some rehab on our inner city streets. So would you also advise us to do some research as to the cause? Or is that going to be a good product to use for our internal road rehab?
The proprietary products like that, I strongly recommend that there's some additional structural testing done to determine whether or not the application recommended by the supplier will actually have the desired a positive impact on remaining service life for those roads. So the mastic product, are they recommending that as on specific roadways or kind of as part of Lincoln's overall maintenance program? I guess if I could ask you that, I might be able to hone in a little bit tighter on an answer.
It is actually going to be within the entire city. We're going to start on the north side. The plan is to start on the north side to ensure that the damage to those cracks doesn't get worse, and then go into the southern part of Lincoln Road where there's more damage. But we're just trying to minimize the damage that we currently have on the north end.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'd be happy to evaluate that with you if I see some photos, I can go back and look at the results of our survey, and I'll take a look at that segment of roadway, and then work with our engineers to figure out if that product will actually have the desired impact for you guys. My concern is applying that type of treatment. The effectiveness of the treatment depends on the existing condition of the roadway to which it is applied. So if the roadway is already structurally failed or is fast approaching failure, most likely we're not going to see a huge benefit by applying that type of a treatment. However, if the cracking that's there currently is nominal at best, those types of products can, when applied appropriately, to spec, with the right surface conditions. Devil is in the detail with these things. They can be used they can successfully increase the remaining service life of those roads. So I'm happy to offline look at the application of that with you to assess
very much
if that will be a cost-effective strategy for y'all.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions? So, let's see where we're at. This is to be tabled until January, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Schmitz, board members. Yesterday, we encountered some technical difficulties. We could not bring Kurt Kiefer online to present this final report to our technical advisory committee. There were some questions from the city of Bismarck regarding some of the data and the analysis that was conveyed in the report, and because Kurt was not able there to answer the questions, the TAC did vote unanimously to table this particular item until January, until such time that those questions could all be worked out. And of course, Kurt mentioned that throughout his report that some updates were occurring with the city of Bismarck. So he and Gabe have been in communication regarding the whole situation, but we would bring this back for approval in January.
Okay, do we need to take any action?
If you would like to provide a formal motion to that effect, just to table or continue this item to January, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
I would make that motion to table until the January meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Next item is the 2026 Bismarck Transit 5339 to 5310 grant applications. Paulette?
Thank you, Mayor. In your packets, starting on page 125, you'll find the Exhibit I, but the first of the two applications. And the North Dakota Department of Transportation has again this year solicited for their state fiscal year 2026 Section 5339 and Section 5310 grant programs. Section 5339 is a bus and bus facilities program, and Section 5310 is the enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities program. Bismarck Transit is requesting approval to submit their grant applications for both programs. On page 125, it shows a 5339 application. They're applying for one fixed route bus, extra funds needed to complete the purchase of another fixed route bus partially funded under another existing grant, one power floor scrubber, and 8 fat tire bike racks. And if awarded, the federal share would be $755,050. Transit would provide a local share of $135,950. The project's totaling $891,000. And I'll scroll down here to the next one, on page 137 would be the Section 5310 grant application. In Bismarck Transit, for their Section 5310, they're applying for the after-hours service, Sunday service, holiday service, early morning service, and the salary for their existing mobility manager position. The application also includes a request to purchase 4 new cutaway buses to replace the existing paratransit vehicles that have exceeded their FTA-defined useful life. There are 9 projects total in this application. If NDDOT approves all projects, the total federal share would be $860,504, and Transit would provide a local share of $333,236. This application is scalable, so NDDOT could award any or all of the projects in the application. Both transit application programs will be presented at the Bismarck City Commission meeting this evening, and staff is seeking a recommendation for the approval of the 5339 and 5310 applications contingent upon the Bismarck City Commission approval. And a note, yesterday TAC voted to recommend approval for both applications as presented, contingent upon Bismarck City Commission approval as well. Any questions or comments?
Questions? What are your wishes?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 9 is the 2029 Urban Regional Projects. Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you, Mayor Schmitz, members of the board. Exhibit K, beginning on page 155 of your packet, provides a table of projects that have been submitted for the fiscal year 29 funding program for the urban regional projects, and I will share my screen and get to that for you. Okay. Here we show 5 projects that were submitted. They were all submitted by the City of Bismarck. On December 3rd, the Prioritization Committee met to discuss and prioritize these projects for consideration of 2029 funding. The committee consisted of Dean Schloss, North Dakota District DOT, Gabe Schell, City of Bismarck, Jarek Wignes, City of Mandan, and myself of the MPO. Engineer Schell went through the projects and he provided the committee with a prioritization based on the needs as perceived by the City of Bismarck. That prioritized rank is shown in the table. North Dakota District DOT Engineer Schloss did not express any concerns or objections to the prioritization that was provided by Engineer Schell. And you will see on the table that MTP objectives were used by MPO staff for scoring, and those scores were provided. However, they are only provided as consideration since all projects are consistent with several objectives of the MTP. And they didn't impact the prioritization suggested by City Engineer Schell in any way. So the prioritization of projects as promoted by the committee is provided in the above table, and MPO staff would support the recommendation of the committee. These projects are all due to be submitted to the DOT by or before December 31st of this year. Yesterday, TAC did recommend approval of these 5 projects in the priority that is shown. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Are there any questions? What will be the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve and forward on.
Second.
Is there any discussion? And that would be with the prioritization as presented, correct?
Yes. Correct.
We'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 10, fiscal 2029 urban roads project. Go ahead,
Thank you
Kim.
again. I will direct your attention to Exhibit Q in the packet. That is on page 181. This particular program is the Urban Roads Program, and the MPO received only one application for this. It was submitted by the City of Mandan. The MPO and its member jurisdictions met with DOT to discuss the fiscal year 29 Urban Roads Program and the available funding for the Bismarck-Mandan MPO area for fiscal year 29. At this time, it is uncertain because we are awaiting a new infrastructure bill through the Federal Highway Administration. However, based on past and previous and historical years, we do believe that the funding will hold consistent with what we've seen in the past. You will see on this table the summary of the project that was submitted by the City of Mandan. It is a reconstruction project. It is from 8th Avenue Northwest, and the extent of that would be from 24th Street on the south to 27th Street on the north, and then also on 27th Street Northwest from 8th Avenue to ND Highway 1806 on the east. It would include asphalt reconstruction, including a left turn, shared lane, some storm sewer replacement, and also street lighting. The total extent of this project is approximately 3,000 linear feet. The total cost and federal cost is shown, total cost being a little over $5.8 million, and the federal cost would be $4.683 million. This is a project that is consistent with the MTP, and this is not the first time that we've seen this project. In fact, we had anticipated that this project would have been programmed for fiscal year 28 funding. However, we were informed by North Dakota DOT earlier that they had to shift some projects around statewide, and the remaining funding that was left was not enough to fund this project, and so they moved some City of Bismarck projects into the FY28 funding program instead, effectively shutting this project out. There is a deteriorating condition of this particular roadway, and also this roadway is only partially urbanized, which means part of it has curb and gutter, and then part of it is like a rural section with just small shoulders and no curb and gutter. And because of the increased traffic volumes due to the new Mandan High School opening this year in that area, it's made the reconstruction of this section of the roadway a real priority for the city of Mandan. So the city of Mandan and the MPO approached North Dakota DOT wondering how we can get this project funded and wondering if there was a way that it could be swapped out with the already programmed project for fiscal year 27, and that is the reconstruction of Old Red Trail, or a portion of Old Red Trail. DOT did provide direction. They said this is entirely plausible and that they would support the swapping of these projects. So Mandan did submit the application to that effect. And you can see on page 188, that Mandan did provide a table showing the already programmed projects. Highlighted down towards the bottom in purple, it shows the fiscal year 27 funding that has been programmed for the Mandan Old Red Trail reconstruction. And that was in a total amount of $5 million, with federal funding amount coming in at $4 million. Mandan's proposal is to swap out the 8th Avenue 27th Street project for that Old Red Trail project in 2027. Now you will notice that there is a bit of a funding difference where the federal cost of the 8th and 27th Street project would be $8.683 million. That means $1.683 million would be needing to be covered by the local, where only $4 million is available in that 27 fiscal year program. And then the Mandan Old Red Trail would be pushed out to fiscal year 29 to be considered for fiscal year 29 funding. So we don't typically do swaps of this nature, but it has been done before. And if you have any questions regarding any of the logistics of the swap or any of the funding amounts that are presented, I'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, I will let you know that TAC did vote unanimously to approve this urban roads application for a funding swap for fiscal year 27 funds to be forwarded to North Dakota DOT, which they need to receive this by 12/31 of this year.
Okay. Are there any questions? What are your wishes?
I move to approve.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 11 is the fiscal 2025 Urban Rail Highway Crossing Safety Program projects. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be directing your attention to Exhibit S, or page 193 in the packet. This is for the fiscal year 25 Urban Rail Highway Crossing Safety Program. So this Exhibit S is a summary of the 2 projects we received this year from the city of Bismarck. MPO staff determined that these projects are consistent with the MTP, but we do not score these projects because we do not have MTP objectives to associate with them. And the solicitation that DOT uses for this program is less formal than most of their other grant programs, and it does not require an application form from the jurisdictions. So we have not historically recommended prioritizing these projects when we forward them to DOT. And I will also note through 2026, these projects, any that DOT awards, are funded completely federally, so the locals do not have to provide contribution to these. So the first project I will just briefly overview. It's a 26th Street railroad crossing in Bismarck between Main and Bowen Avenues. So this would involve the installation of additional panels on the west side of the railroad crossing to function as a sidewalk for pedestrians, which will complete the recent pedestrian improvements made in the project area by the city. And the second project is the 24th Street Railroad crossing between Main and Front Avenue for the replacement or removal of the southern two railroad crossings. Any crossing that is not being used would be removed, and any still in use would be replaced. TAC did recommend approval of these projects to forward to DOT unprioritized, as presented.
Any questions? What would be the wishes of the policy board?
I recommend approval.
Okay. Any just
See the railroad crossing moved out. And I'll tell you why. I worked on the railroad and there's less and less and eventually it's going to come back. But whatever.
okay. I think this is to provide safety where those railroad crossings are, but not take. This is not take them out. This is to provide safety around them for pedestrians. Correct? At least that's what it was when we heard the presentation at commission meetings.
Correct.
We'll call roll.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
and Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 12 is the 2025 Unified Planning Work Program update, or contract. Excuse me. Go ahead, Kim.
Mayor Schmitz, I'll direct your attention to Exhibit V in the packet, page 199. This is a standard contract between North Dakota DOT and the Bismarck-Mandan MPO regarding their annual work program. The MPO's 2025 UPWP, or Unified Planning Work Program, was approved by DOT and the Federal Highway Administration in November of 24. The UPWP includes the MPO's work program of planned activities to be undertaken in cooperation with its jurisdictions in 2025. The MPO's policy board approved the 2025 UPWP in October. Now, the 2025 UPWP contract is established between the MPO and the North Dakota to allow North Dakota DOT to reimburse the MPO for 80% of all federally eligible costs in its budget and work program. In 2025, the MPO is eligible for Federal Consolidated Planning Grant, or CPG, fund reimbursement up to a maximum of $684,174 as indicated on the UPWP contract. The MPO is provided funding for operations and expenses to the City of Bismarck, which is then reimbursed back to the city by North Dakota DOT using CPG funds. For this reason, the City of Bismarck is shown on the 2025 UPWP contract as the subrecipient. This is a standard North Dakota contract with no one-time changes, and it has successfully completed the city's contract review process. It would be in effect from January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. TAC did recommend approval of the UPWP contract with North Dakota DOT, and I would stand for any questions. Otherwise, staff is requesting approval by the policy board for the contract.
Any questions? What are the wishes of the board?
I move to approve.
Second? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. 2025 monitoring report update.
All right, so the MPO solicited 6 consultants for its 2025 monitoring report update, and I just wanted to let you know we received 2 proposals. As staff, the MPO scored these proposals, and the selection ended up choosing HDR to perform this update in 25. So I am in the process of contract negotiations with the consultant, and we will start the project early next year, pending finalization of our UPWP contract. So more updates to come. Any questions?
Nope, we'll wait for your updates.
And yep, the final note for regular agenda is the meeting calendar, and I do have that up on the screen. It's the last page of the packet. No significant changes. Meetings are still on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m., but I will let everyone know we are moving to Bismarck, Tom Baker Room, starting next month, January, and we will be in Bismarck through June and come back here in July. That's all I have.
Does anyone else have any other business?
Say it, say it, say it.
Say it. We're adjourned.